We found out the composition of the new Reserve Bank boards, that's plural, today. Essentially what the federal government has done is split it in two, with a monetary board that will oversee interest rates and a governance board that will look at the other affairs of the central bank. The 9 existing members were able to choose which board they'd sit on, and the 2 new members are ex-Bendigo bank boss Marnie Baker and ANU economics professor Renee Fry-McKibben. Here was Treasurer Jim Chalmers this morning.
So these are high quality, high calibre people, and together they represent the best mix of relevant skills and abilities and experience. I'm very proud to say that women will make up the majority of both boards, and this continues the very substantial progress that we've made when it comes to appointments in the Treasury portfolio.
Who cares if they're women? I mean, I would have thought good monetary policy and keeping the economy on track were more important. But of course, it raises the question of whether this is the federal government stacking the RBA board to deliver a rate cut before the federal election. This was Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor yesterday.
Our position on the Reserve Bank board has been clear all along. We want to see the existing board transition to the new board. We've said we'd work with the Labor Party, but we don't support sack and stack. They decided they wanted to stand at a drafting gate and decide who went to which board. We don't agree with that. We've been clear about that all along. Our position won't change.
Scott Hargreaves, Executive Director of the Institute of Public Affairs, is with me now. Scott, I must admit, I'm not averse to the idea of having 2 separate boards, one that looks after the monetary policy and one that looks after the governance affairs of the RBA, because, you know, presumably you'd like to have people who are specifically interested and expert in monetary policy looking after those things, and perhaps people who have other skill sets looking after governance issues. Am I wrong to think that?
Oh, in and of itself, it's not a terrible idea, but it's a real pea and thimble trick, Caleb. I mean, this is a 3rd or 4th order issue compared to the real drivers of inflation, which the federal government has been responsible for driving through inflationary budgets, out of control spending. That's what's keeping inflation up. That's what's keeping interest rates above the level that they otherwise might have been. So whether or not you have 1 board or 2, the question is really, is that really the key to getting interest rates down to a level that Australians are more comfortable with? And also we have to ask, is this really a way for the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, to apply that pressure to Michelle Bullock at the RBA, who so far has shown that she definitely has a spine. She has withstood the Treasurer's blandishments to cut interest rates, because she said rightly that looking at the economic policy settings that the federal government's put in place, she could not justify it. And what's happening here is certainly in the transition to 2 boards, there's opportunities to apply some of that pressure. There's some good appointments there, but you've got to think about that overall context, Caleb.
Indeed, and I mean, I think Michelle Bullock, as you said, has been an excellent appointment as Governor of the RBA. I was sceptical to begin with. I thought after Philip Lowe, it would have been good to get someone in there who wasn't from within the RBA microcosm, because often you end up with people from within the RBA who do what the RBA has always done because that's all they've ever known, and I think that's probably where Philip Lowe went wrong to some degree. But she has been very clear. She's a great communicator, and she's taken it up to the federal government. It's no surprise then that they would want to water down her power to some degree. The question is whether or not they can actually get what they want, which is an interest rate cut before the federal election.
And you look at the levers that they've used here, and certainly the 2 women who were mentioned as appointees are eminently qualified. But I look down the list and I see on a monetary policy board that's supposed to be for expertise there, we have Ian Ross, late of the Fair Work Commission, someone that the ALP has called upon to fill in a number of roles, and who is currently the head of something called the Net Zero Authority, appointed only earlier this year by the same Labor government. So on the one hand, he's meant to be in charge of a monetary policy board that, amongst other things, has full employment as an objective, but his day job is down at the Net Zero Authority, actually destroying the jobs of Australians by pursuing a crazy carbon goal. So it just makes you think that maybe people like Ian Ross are there really to be that conduit back to the government's role. And I don't see how that is really going to cut interest rates for anybody, because the only thing that's going to cut interest rates is government restraint on spending, which at the moment is out of control.
Well, I mean, if the federal government keeps going the way they are, we've had 7 straight quarters of household income going backwards. We'll actually end up with net zero money after all of this. So maybe they're actually onto something. Getting
and it's net zero jobs
from the Net Zero board to run the show. But and you mentioned 2 women there, and I mentioned this before. What on earth is the Treasury doing? Oh, look, we've got lots of women on the RBA board. Does anyone actually look at the board of the RBA and go, oh my God, I'm really glad that we've got more women than men deciding whether or not my interest rate goes up or down? I think we're all just rather concerned with whether or not we have money to pay the bills and feed our children, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. So the symbolic measures like this don't really go to the concerns of ordinary Australians. And the ironic thing for Jim Chalmers now, having been unsuccessful in 2024 in jawboning the RBA into a rate cut, is that perhaps one will be delivered just before the next election. But Caleb, Australians aren't mugs. They know what's been driving inflation and the cost of living crisis. And if a new RBA board, a monetary policy board, whether it's female-dominated or male-dominated, cuts 0.24% off the mortgage rate, and some of that gets passed through, Australians aren't mugs. They're going to see the big picture, and they're just going to see that as more tokenism. And I think at the ballot box, they'll form a judgment based on 3 years of government, not two months of rate cuts.
Indeed, and they desperately want that rate cut because they haven't got much else to speak of as an achievement during their time in government. Scott Hargreaves, thank you so much for your time.